wonderful people taking part in panel discussion together with me. I'm going to be representing today Scandiweb. I'm leading one of the business development departments here. I'm Adobe Commerce lead, and will be representing the agency perspective. I will be joined by Erway, who is the group product manager at Adobe. He is a product and user experience leader with more than 25 years of experience. Eric currently leads the experiences and group product manager of Adobe Commerce at Adobe. In addition, he serves as an Adobe liaison with the Magento Association. Eric is passionate about product experience and solving complex problems through design thinking. He holds a bachelor's degree from Virginia Tech and computer sciences. I hope I've done the introductions correctly, Eric.
No, that's great. 20 years, I feel very old, but yes. So thank you so much for having me.
On the other hand, from the merchant perspective, we have Jonathan Ribas. I hope I pronounced that correct, Jonathan.
It's okay, don't worry, Maris.
Nice Hello, to see everyone. You back, Jonathan. Jonathan is a CTO and managing and a Magento architect. He's working for a company called Caudalie, a French skincare brand. He's been previously also with the fashion brands Zadig and Voltaire, where they built, if I remember correctly, a new storefront in the early days. Jonathan has spent most of his career as an e-commerce and a dedicated Magento ecosystem architect. And yeah, it's lovely to have you here today with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. Happy to see it again.
So, Jonathan, can you give us perhaps a little bit of a background about yourself? What do you do, and what is your daily life look like at the company?
Yes, of course. Nowadays, I work at Caudalie. I've been working with digital area for more than 10 years now in several areas like developer. I started like this, and then lead developer. I built my company in Brazil, and it's where I knew about Magento more than 10 years ago. So actually, I'm more in CTO positions since a couple of years now, where I built a PWA with Vue Storefront, as you've mentioned, decoupling with Magento 2. Adobe Commerce. So it was in 2018, so it's a couple of years now, 4 years back. It's great to see what we have built. The website is still online. And with this Vue Storefront application, we have really nice results. And today I'm at Caudalie and building a new story with Vue Storefront 2. I will tell you a bit more later about this.
All right, fantastic. And Eric, a little bit more about you and what is your role at Adobe? What is the change that you're actually making?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So thanks again for having me, Jonathan. Good to see you again here. So my team, my small but mighty team here leads the experiences here with Adobe Commerce. I've been with Magento, now Adobe, for over 7 years, and as liaison to the Magento Association, this is a really exciting year for us. We're starting to activate and really bring to market some of the most exciting things that, in many ways, have been, I would say, foreshadowed for quite some time. And so, while you'll see me a lot with PWA, you'll see me a lot with the other things. We've got teams, like Elena and Dave, who are doing this day in and day out. We've got releases happening on a regular cadence, in some cases faster than the platform itself. And, we're delivering against what we feel like are the biggest customer needs of all shapes and sizes, where even with like the 2.4.4 release, which we'll talk about shortly, it's the fastest and really the most complex. It has the ability to handle the complex better than any other release in history, especially with PHP 8.1. So it's really exciting times. My team tends to focus on the storefront itself, the GraphQL APIs, and the business user experience, otherwise known as the admin. And we work, and my team works very closely with Adobe teams, works closely with other commerce teams that are bringing to life things like product recommendations, live search, and other areas. And so that's kind of a little bit what my day looks like. I'm actually here in the Austin office, and so I've been here regularly for quite some time, and it's really great to see everybody. And as folks start to return back to the office, it's a really exciting time to be part of this. And it really is all about experience at all those three different levels.
I completely agree. And yes, I'm representing here Scandiweb. So I'm leading one of the business development departments at Scandi, and I get to talk to a lot of merchants on a daily basis. We are the team who's actually driving the e-commerce forward from Scandiweb side. And obviously Adobe Commerce is one of our go-to tools. We use it a lot and use it often. So it's interesting to see how Adobe is changing over the years. And recently it does seem like it's really picking up the pace. I'm absolutely loving the latest 2.4 release. It does give us ability to start marketing it to bigger merchants. It can handle far larger catalogs. It's faster than ever. Yet at the same time, there are all other different trends that are coming up. Eric, perhaps you can expand a little bit. What do you feel like are the next big things in digital commerce? What are the next big things in e-commerce? What should we be looking out? I know a couple of years ago we started looking at PWA. We are looking at modular commerce, etc. Mm-hmm. What is the next big thing? What should we expect from Magento, from e-commerce in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, what we should expect really is an evolution and not a revolution of where we started to take things like the front end today. And what I mean by that is, as you look at the customer needs, again, of all shapes and sizes, B2B is first and foremost, right? And so if you think about the ultimate flexibility and really the history where we've come from Magento, gone into Adobe, those needs need to be managed, right? There's not really a cookie cutter experience for B2B. And so we need to deliver a solution that can be customized and help achieve the needs, certainly at the API layer, but also in a turnkey way that gives you out of the box references, components, and what have you, that can be easily managed behind the scenes. And so B2B is not, I would say it's not revolutionary, but you'll see a lot more in that area. And then the other part too, that's, I would say, near and dear to my heart is that of experiences. And what I mean by that is, if you look at even data from Adobe Analytics from this past holiday season, we have still yet to really to close the gap on the mobile conversion rate. And so when you think about our experiences and the things that can be done, yes, of course, PWA is part of that, but performance is as well. And really our ability to start to unlock a lot of the capabilities themselves that are in the web today and put them against use cases that solve problems for customers. And so service worker is that one piece, but then starting to think about WebXR, starting to think about Bluetooth, starting to think about even the contacts picker API that provides a really interesting scenario for B2B. The idea where you're in a field, you can choose something that's already on your phone. The nice thing is you don't have to build that. That just rides on top of our APIs. And so my premise on that is that we've really just scratched the surface on experiences. We've got a lot of the raw ingredients, but as a chef or maybe a restaurant, it's really going to be up to us to show the full potential of that one. So I think it's really going to be evolutionary, but I think we are really we have a lot of potential as an industry and as a community to help activate those together.
Jonathan, from your perspective, as a merchant, what do you see as the needs that are pending? Where do you think the e-commerce should be heading from your perspective?
I think Eric gave us a great response with a lot of keywords, really interesting, like performance, for example. For us, it's really important to have a performant website because we need to create the best experience ever for our customers. They need to reach our website and see it the fastest possible and to be easy to go through the navigation and to find what they want to buy actually. So it's what we are trying to do at Caudalie. And that's why we are building a new front end to be faster and to make a better user experience. What I actually see a big topic in digital commerce actually in Europe is also all regarding GDPR and Google Analytics. It's being crazy stuff over there. We are already looking at other solutions, and we don't have a clear position of the regulations that will be. So it's a real topic today. And finally, I think we need to be nearer to our customers. And that's why we have implemented a live shopping feature in our website. So it's something really interesting after the COVID, because everyone is going back to the stores, but we need to keep the relationship with the customers inside the digital area. So that's why we have implemented the live shopping. It's quite great to see the people coming and see the videos and then exchange with our specialists, because we are working on beauty and skincare.
Could you perhaps expand a tiny bit on the technical implementation for the live shopping? How does it work in your case?
Yeah, at Caudalie, we are working even more with the best of breed approach. So the live shopping is from a partner which called Bamboozer, and they offer all the stuff to just plug and play the live shopping into your CMS.
All right, fantastic. Okay, let's talk a little bit about headless and PWA. Obviously, the topic's been around since quite some years ago, and it's still going on, of course. So we saw in the previous session that PWAs or progressive web applications are sitting as a core of composable commerce or modular commerce, as you call it. So Eric, looking back at the early days of PWA and the first PWA releases, first experiences, and when you compare the first experiences to what is available now, what are the differences? How do you see this technology evolving?
That's a great question. So yeah, as many of you know, we started our journey with PWA when we introduced GraphQL as part of the Magento and Adobe Commerce Core 2.3. It's been quite a journey that I think, the way that I frame this with key customers is that we started off very much with a developer-led focus. We had the beginnings of GraphQL coverage, mostly B2C, a few cases here and there. The beginnings of a very basic shopping experience, but with the help of now over 200 community members and almost 3,000 members who we participate with every day. So it started off very much developer focused, which is great. That's generally how those go. But as we evolved, we really started to introduce business level controls. And so when we introduced Page Builder, and we've seen some examples with third party CMSs and others really starting to give those keys back to the merchant in an important and useful way, that's really where we've evolved. And so this has to be a solution and where we've evolved today is a solution that solves all those needs, not just the developer. And so we start off with that, and it's gotten to us a really good spot. But at this point, we've got over 650 launches, and those launches have gotten pretty, I would say, pretty sophisticated. And there are larger brands like HP, like Ray and Marian just discussed, that are using this in new, interesting ways. And what makes that really powerful is that, we've got sound technology. We continue to evolve and refine the APIs, not only in terms of coverage, but optimizing themselves. So Christian Partika, my team, is doing some great work on that with teams as well. And then really bringing this to surface in a way that becomes turnkey and maintainable, looking at overall total cost of ownership, et cetera. And I think the one thing we have to continue to watch out for is that factor, because ultimately with great flexibility comes great responsibility as well. So standards, other considerations are super important. And so we kind of go back and forth on what that looks like. But if you look at where we are right now, we're solving much more complex use cases. We're getting more into B2B, some of which are working even ahead of where we are right now. And we were sitting on top of a very robust set of GraphQL APIs that are much farther along than where we started off with, and in starting to round out our coverage for, again, things like B2B and other areas. This is all on top of front-end technology, which continues to evolve, and some of the investments that we're exploring that will continue to make sure that we're high performant, delivering those against those experiences, and doing so in an iterative way. So our end customers, but also partners and merchants can build from, migrate, et cetera, with all the solutions that are out there. So that's kind of where we are, but it's really making sure that we don't forget about that business user experience along the way, which I know the industry is starting to look at as well. But we started off very small with that set of developer tools for PW Studio to build, optimize, and deploy on top of Magento, on top of Adobe Commerce.
I know it's probably not anywhere in sight, but do we see at any point Adobe Commerce and PWAs working with at least some popular microservices on the plug-and-play basis?
Yes, I mean, one of the nice things that we've seen, and whether it's microservices or really our composability or modularity, one of the successes, or a few of the successes we've seen, is around our AEM integration. So as far back as about a year and a half ago, the Venya-based components can be seen in key launches like Sazerac, which includes Buffalo Trace whiskey, and a few others, as well as TiVo and others. And so you're starting to see the residual of what we're creating that is well more than just PWA, but really a set of modular components that fit the need, that also work in and out of certainly the Adobe level of products, but also some new and interesting ways as well. So that flexibility goes well beyond the parameters of any one platform. And so in terms of microservices, and some of the work that's happening there, we continue to look at some new and interesting ways with GraphQL and API services that will still have that same contract and that same compatibility from the head down to the platform itself, but looking at ways where that can be a little bit less coupled, as you'll hear from like Igor and Nishant and many others who've talked about this for quite some time. So you'll see us continue to move in that direction. As Gartner points out, we've kind of gone from traditional. We're still, very much in that gray area of decoupled and decoupling at this point. But to become fully headless, you've got to have all three layers of that cake, so to speak, as Ray would say, separated in a way that is still highly performant, highly scalable, and flexible. And so, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but there are a couple examples where we are modular in a couple, non-commerce, non-Magento ways, and then we've got I think a really exciting future that will start to get into further decoupling into a full headless solution.
Jonathan, when was the first time you heard the term PWA, and when was the first time you started thinking about implementing that on one of your projects?
I started to listen this buzzword like 4 or 5 years ago, let's say, and they were like 10 attractive commandments, like app-like, performance, works on any device, push notifications, work offline. So it was easy for me to sell this to the stakeholders where I was working at Zadig and Voltaire, because we would like to have a better website for mobile in order to increase the mobile conversion. And we built a really nice project with Vue Storefront and Adobe Commerce at Zadig and Voltaire. And the KPIs are here to prove it. We have improved the mobile conversion rates by 72%. We also had more page views, more than 115%. We also decreased the first page load time by 22%. And after that, the navigation is really smooth on PWA, so you don't have to load all the resources again. And we also seen great improvements in terms of SEO with an higher organic search monthly traffic by 31%. And then we decreased the mobile bounce by 62%.
But this project you're talking about, you were early adopters. This was quite some time ago. What was going on in your mind? Why did you want to dive into a technology that nobody was familiar with? Yes, it was a buzzword. It looked okay on the paper. Well, it looked great on the paper, but not many people had actually tried it. What gave you the push to make the decision, yes, I'm going to do it and I can handle it. My team can handle it. We can build it and we can make this a success.
Yeah, so we decided to do a POC in order to connect our old Magento 1 with Vue Storefront, because they had an integration production ready and they had some little customers using it, and the POC was a success. It was really easy for us to plug and play the solutions between them, and then it was working like out of the box, like almost all our features were okay. So when I did the demo to the marketing teams and the stakeholders, they were really confident that it was possible to make it. So then we took a look at several companies that were maybe able to join us on this project. We shortlisted 4 companies in Europe. We talked about our project, about what we wanted to do, our timelines, and then we decided to go with a French company to make it. Of course, at start of the project, it was not easy because it was new for almost everyone to work with storefronts, but it's like knowing a new framework. There's always a learning curve. Sometimes it's slower, and other times faster.
All right. Well, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. It's probably still the case. We have one question from audience, Eric, probably more addressed to you. We have Magento ecosystem, and we are all very familiar with it, but we also know it comes at some cost in a physical way. And most of the costs a lot of the costs that you accumulate is revolving around infrastructure and then servicing that infrastructure. Of course, now there's Magento Cloud, but it still comes with some cost. How does Magento compares against the future of Shopify and other SaaS-driven platforms? What are the biggest advantages, and what is the future looking like? Is there a trend for amount of Magento merchants to reduce, or is it actually growing? Are we losing out on the competition, or are we gaining an upper hand on some areas here?
It's a great question. I'm trying to unpack. I think there's about 7 questions in that one, so I'm going to do my best to go through this in a couple different ways. So keep me honest if I miss any. So in terms of a couple things here. So I think our biggest advantage, and we run into this from time to time, talking to customers, partners, developers. When we think about Shopify, what Shopify is doing is very interesting, but ultimately it doesn't serve the needs of our customers, whether they be customers, whether they're customers that have come along with us for the ride, in my case, over 7 years, and to the history of the platform, to the ones that we're looking at, and we continue to extend with Adobe. And what I mean by that is, complex use cases, complex scenarios, especially in B2B, while they may be served in a very, very simple case, the ability to customize, extend, and really build with flexibility is an area that we continue to win. That we hear this regularly for customers, and our work and our focus really continues to drive for that need. So in addition to that, as many of you probably heard me and many of my other peers say, we're equally proud of what we've done, but how we've done it. So our community is unmatched. We have hundreds of thousands of developers and examples that have used our product for quite some time. And as part of that, the learnings, the community, and some of the key tenets of the Magento Association, not unlike Drupal, are ways that we continue to work through this, and we really innovate and build great things together. That's something that we don't see in all platforms. But looking at what Shopify is doing, they do solve a specific case. But I think ultimately we're looking at a much more, I think, sophisticated and flexible platform to solve for that. And the work that we're doing both now, as you've seen with 244, and then in the future, we'll continue to serve those needs and continue to make sure that even some of the basic cases are handled and done in a way where developers really want to see that and work with that flexibility, extend into and grow with that business, and to do so in a way that provides, I'd say, easy onboarding and really quick starts that we've seen either as a platform, but also third-party projects like View Storefront and others. You see the success of that. You see the success of Hoova and others. That's the spirit that we're continuing to capture in almost a decoupled way. I don't see that necessarily happening as much in others. You'll see a few of them that are close. So I would say that would be my point of view on that, and we continue to get feedback and assertions from analysts and customers that kind of show that difference in complexity that we can continue to handle, and that flexibility, especially when you want to make customization. So we want to make that much easier at a lower cost. In terms of the future, I think the future is really around a lot of the things that you heard from Marian and Ray. The product roadmap continues to drive towards a modular and really headless future. We can't forget our past, and we've got some great work that continues to look at a very high performant lean version of this. Our net new functionality is coming out that continues to be in support of that, and also in new and interesting ways like product recommendations, live search, and then of course our new storefront around that's built using P2A Studio, etc. That's Venya. But ultimately, those aren't the only options. And so as we look at this, there are third-party options that also work seamlessly with this as well. And I think that's where we win as a product, but that's also how we win as a community. So I don't know if that covered at least 5 or 6 of those 7. That's certainly my candid point of view on at least some of those areas. But again, keep me honest if there's another question or two that I didn't hit. I'm happy to address.
Sure. In terms of the Magento and Adobe Commerce, you did mention a couple of newer things. Are there other new things in the pipeline? Can we expect some news from Magento and Adobe in the near future?
Well, there's always news, right? So for us, ultimately, we've got a very robust roadmap together. We don't really see. I mean, Magento is part of what we're doing around open source. The platform is very much part of Adobe Commerce. The majority of the usage, the majority of the adoption that we're seeing is still often at that open source level. And as you've seen with 244, there was a substantial amount of partner and even developer contribution that is part of that. So that still remains the case. And so that might not necessarily be news. I think the news is basically a continuation of that. Beyond that, I think a lot of the news, to be honest, is happening out of the Magento Association. So I'm spending a lot of time, in the last couple months, looking at ways that we can grow and scale that to be in a way that, starts to look at things like open source itself and starts to look at, elections and membership and things like that we need for this community to grow and thrive, that are, based on, some of the starting points and some of the, I would say some of the recent interest in the community itself. And so I think you'll see a lot of the news come through that, at least from a kind of a classic Magento side. And on the Adobe side, it's really about activating those experiences, some of which you're seeing already, and others that I think will really start to make sense. That get into some of the more complex scenarios and use cases for that one. So yeah, not a formal press release or anything like that, but I would say, stay tuned for the Magento Association and what they're doing to kind of grow and scale the community. Josh and team are doing a great job, with Danny, Sonia, and many others on the board. They started this journey months ago, and we're really starting to see some of this come to life.
All right. With lots and lots of new things coming out, and obviously with the composable and modular commerce coming out with PWAs, lots of new technology for merchants, developers, agencies, for everybody to comprehend all of the information and learn new skills. How do you see new technology solutions that they apply a new complexity for all teams? So how do you see using it? What's the best start? How do you keep up with everything that's coming out, and how do you keep up? Mostly, how do you keep up as a company to catching up with the technology? And I think, Jonathan, this is more addressed to you as a merchant who works with all of these new technologies on a daily basis from a merchant perspective.
Yes. So, as I told you guys at the start of the conversation, we are trying to tend more to a best of breed approach, because we don't have an army of developers today at Caudalie. To be honest, we have nowadays, because we are working on the replatforming, we have more people. But when I arrived at Caudalie, we had one full stack developer, one backend developer, one front-end developer, and a DevOps. So it's a small team to make all the possible integrations with new technologies that can reach from the marketing teams, because they also always have great ideas to implement, but it takes time. It takes development time. It takes QA time, product ownership time also. It's a lot of time to implement those kind of solutions. That's why we tend to best of breed. It's plug and play, but after we can of course, have some ideas to customize the plug and play approach. And it's where it takes development time, but less than integrating all of it. I can give you an example of integrating a PSP, for example. It's quite a lot of time to implement all the payment methods that can be today, like we have PayPal, we have a credit card, we have Klarna, we have every day there are new payment methods arriving in the market. So we need to be really time to market and use this best of breed approach as much as we can.
Yeah, it's really interesting from our side as well, when we work with customers on a daily basis. Obviously, our customers and our clients too, everybody has a lot of ideas. There's a lot of things you want to implement, but every single time, at least with the business development department, when we approach the client and we kind of start analyzing what shall we do for real, we typically start by looking at what returns the biggest and best value to the client in conversion rate or in terms of reaching the goals. So as any project, we always suggest our clients to start with setting up the goals. Like, what is the goal? Do we want to drive more traffic? Do we want to increase the conversion? Is it some user experience issues that we want to resolve? And this is how we start looking at which area needs improving. By that, we can start deciding what technology do we need to apply. So rather than trying to impose the technology and then think how can it resolve an issue, we always start by looking at the issue itself in the core and figuring out what is technology that can resolve this. Like, what can we apply? It's the same as going to the doctor. You don't go to doctor saying like, hey, I got these really nice pills, like what can I do with them? You always going to the doctor saying like, my leg hurts. Can you give me something that's going to fix it? And this is exactly the same approach we take with our clients, and we see good success with that, because this way we can structure the backlog in phases, so we can actually look at different parts of implementation, especially working with headless commerce, with composed commerce. We have an ability, like Mariam was saying, telling everyone as well, we have the ability to work on separate areas, sometimes even simultaneously by different teams of developers, resolving entirely different problems at the same time, and actually ending up with something that makes an actual difference for the consumer. Eric, from you as well, obviously you're on the side who's created these technologies. People like me and Jonathan, we only get to go and read on blogs and what's come out and etc. You actually get to create all of that, and or if anything else, you know sooner than us what's going to be there. How do you keep up with everything that's new? Because I assume there's probably a good part of technology that gets abandoned before we know about it.
It's a really good question. I think to me, I think this comes back to some of the principles that we looked at the very beginning of the project, especially around PWA. But it's not unique to PWA. It's really around front end or technologies in general. And consciously, we decided to choose standard off the shelf frameworks and development tools in many ways, so that we weren't necessarily inventing anything new. Of course, there's going to be some exceptions here and there, but ultimately, when you stay with standards, there's a lot of value to that. And one of the biggest values is around developer experience, because ultimately, when you're thinking about developers and partners, especially, there is training, there's enablement, and so we've seen seen some great work from a lot of folks in our ecosystem, like Yissa, like Mark, and others that, and also Joseph Maxwell and all that have said, okay, how do we help people get to the next on this one? But part of that is just understanding where the trends are. But part of that is, from a product standpoint, is making sure that if we're going to introduce anything that is non-standard, it better be 10x better. And it better be 10x better for not only developers, but partners and merchants along the way. So we try to be almost incredibly basic in terms of those choices, but really the value is around how do we configure, optimize those in a way that helps solve those needs, that will work and work extremely well with the commerce platform. and the Magento open source platform itself. So yeah, staying on top of that, we continue to look at a lot of trends that some of which are from HTTP Archive. We look at those. We look at built with. We look at some internal trends and tools as well. But I think the secret may be just standardization, and I think that's something you have to watch out for as we look at the various solutions that are out there. And I think that can be hard, right? And part of it is just change is hard, and especially if you're familiar with one way versus another. It's just the nature of technology.
Jonathan, since joining Caudalie, probably have done some innovation in terms of technology in the development. Can you perhaps give us some ideas or insight to what have you brought to on the table for the company in terms of improvements?
Yes, I inherit from a multi-repositories project when I arrived at Caudalie. They were working like an agency, but we are not an agency, we are a merchant. So one of the first projects we did was creating a mono repository to have all our modules in a single place. It was really easier for us to maintain all the modules we had. We also had a CI and a CD, very complex, and we were working with an historical partner for hosting that we were not so happy with them. So we decided to build our infrastructure on AWS with Kubernetes, and we've gone live in a few months for all our regions. And now we have an internal roadmap to host our Adobe Commerce and also next View Storefront too. And then we secure our platform because we were very late on updating the most important modules for payment, promotions, and also Adobe Commerce. So we have upgraded everything. And also applied the quality patches from Adobe Commerce. I just did a couple of them just before our call today for letting us know that we are really regular in updating our Adobe Commerce because it's very important for the security and also the performance of the application and the bug fixes. We try to tend to a zero policy bug. It's not easy, but we try to do it. And we corrected also all the slow transactions we could find on New Relic. I will tell you, we found a lot, and a lot of them were on custom code. It was not even on the core of Magento. So that's why you need to really take care of what you do with your plugins, with your preferences and stuff like this. And in terms of performance, we applied also a better cache policy because it was not done actually on the custom modules. Also, we were always calling MySQL or Elasticsearch, but we could have those informations on Redis to be faster. And we also removed a lot of unused source code because you always have queries from the marketing teams. Oh, please develop this custom module. And then you find that 2 years after you don't even use it, or you have never used it ever. So we clean all this source code. Yeah, it's like a resume of what I did when I arrived at Caudalie.
I'm going to jump out of the Magento and Adobe Cloud bubble for a moment here, but you did mention, Jonathan, an interesting point there. You are on AWS and you're leveraging Kubernetes. I just wanted you to expand very quickly. How are you leveraging Kubernetes? Is it some pod auto healing? Is it zero?
Yes. So,
or what's the setup?
We are near zero downtime deployment, let's say, because there is still the setup upgrade part that kills us a bit sometimes when we do a patch version upgrade, because there are some modules that change the database. And it's a really interesting question because sometimes the developers don't think where they put some data. And when you touch a table like sales order in Adobe Commerce, which is the table where you store all the orders from your customers, and you add a single column inside this table, when you run a setup grid, it will take several minutes if you have millions of rows in this table. So when we do upgrades, we really take care of all of this. And sometimes we do like press scripts to generate those queries and not the setup upgrade to do it by itself. Otherwise, we have the website a long time down and it's not great. But it has improved quite a lot from the past few years. Now we even see it so much anymore, so we are really happy with it. And we decided to build our Kubernetes cluster using Rancher, because Rancher could help us to have a control plane and to be easy to install some modules and have all the monitoring part with Grafana and Prometheus. So we are doing really nice things with it, like dashboards with orders, and then alerting, for example, if we don't have an order in a couple of minutes in a certain store, it's not normal for us. So we are notified by all of this on Slack. So we are doing great stuff at Caudalie. It's really interesting.
Sounds really interesting. So it does sound like you're using a lot of third-party modules on top of your Magento build, and you did mention briefly there. You did mention briefly there about version upgrades. What does a typical version upgrade look for you as a merchant? And I don't know whether in terms of time or effort, how easy would you say is it to deal with it for you?
Yeah, it depends if it's a patch version or a minor, of course. Patch versions are a bit easier nowadays, so less efforts for our team, but it takes some efforts because we need to do the QA of everything again. Unfortunately, today we don't have an automatic solution to make our tests. We will implement a solution like this in our next platform. That's why we have not worked on this the last year. We decided to do the QA manually. So mostly it's about QA, because the upgrade itself, it's well documented. Today, you can find the backward incompatibilities and stuff. You can see the classes that changes, so you can apply quickly your changes on your modules. And if you used plugins, of course, it's easier than preferences, and you earn sometime too. But a minor one is more effort. It's like, let's say, 1 or 2 months, maybe for us to make the upgrade. It takes some time, and it would be great to have releases that are smaller. It's something we can see a lot in the community, complaining about very big releases, having even more small releases in time. It could really help us to upgrade more frequently.
I'll be completely and entirely honest and transparent with the audience. I actually had this question written down for myself to expand upon, but I really wanted this to come out from the merchant's mouth, from the third party that's not connected to Adobe, not connected to the agency side, but it's coming actually from the people who use the product as the end user. And yeah, so of course, from the agency perspective, the same. We see the minor upgrades. So we always say the bigger the upgrade, the bigger the gap, the longer it takes. And usually it's not the Magento itself that takes the time. The Magento upgrade in itself doesn't really take that much time. You can upgrade the core. It's quite easy, straightforward. But all of the customizations, all of the extensions that come with it, we need to upgrade every single piece of it as a separate part of the software. When we look at some microservices implementation, at times it can technically make it easier, at times it can make it harder. It depends how the microservice is connected, whether it's connected to the core or whether it's just a front-end implementation. in that case, it can vary vastly. But yeah, of course, but nevertheless, Eric, upgrades are not going away, right? We still gonna need them.
Upgrades are a big part of kind of where we've come, but we've spent a lot of time, certainly in the 2.4x series, to make that easier than ever before. So we've got quite a few tools like the upgrade compatibility tool and a few other areas that we know this is an area of need, and not only for developers but partners and merchants, being able to plan for that, and making sure also that our releases are impactful in a way so that we don't necessarily need to we don't have to do frequently. We have to be very thoughtful and purposeful in that. And so the tools, I think, continue to help. So they're not going away. If anything, they're making them easier. And so I think Jonathan's feedback and I think his comments, I think, are spot on. And it's good to hear that that's definitely the outcomes that we're driving for. And we've been doing more and more in each of these for the past year or so. Our work is not done, though. We're going to continue making that easier.
Sure. Let's look at some PWA options. So obviously we know Jonathan mentioned that he's been working with a Vue storefront, and we know that there are a few, and I think in a way, each of us represents one of the solutions in a way. But looking for your opinion, Eric. So you did mention briefly that there are some other options out in the market. Just a brief comparison or some thoughts on, of course, PWA Studio and Venia Theme, and in comparison to some other solutions that and some ups and downs.
Yeah, it probably merits a longer conversation, but our perspective is, again, we know, and I think we really, I think, respect the fact that there are a lot of great third-party solutions out there. There's also a lot of third-party themes built on top of our solutions, which is an important note to make, right? And so when we think about this idea of a PWA or a headless solution or a modular solution or a theme, it's important to understand what your goals are. Again, I like kind of how we talked about this, initially. And while that seems like a vague question, ultimately, when you decide to choose a PWA, you're going in a headless direction, right? You got to make sure that you're prepared for that. You have to make sure that you're trained, your team is ready, you're working with a great partner to help pull this together. And so ultimately, those are all key considerations. Now, specific to PWA Studio and Venia, again, where we started off with a set of developer tools with Studio to build, optimize, and deploy PWA, this is it still requires what we're doing on GraphQL. This still is requires, and I think our biggest value is that things do come more pre-integrated. So if you think about how Apple works as a hardware manufacturer between the hardware and software, we continue to focus exclusively on making sure that stack works extremely well. Doesn't mean there's other partners out there and other solutions that can interoperate, and that's great. I think that often it can be done at GraphQL, and they solve different needs. They may have different technologies that are preferred or more comfortable for certain teams, and that's okay. That's part of the nature of headless and modular in general. But ultimately, our goal is to make that work extremely well across stack. Again, not unlike how Apple does hardware and software. And by keeping that focus, we really feel like we've got an exciting solution that will make a lot of these extras more easily available and integrated, whether it's experience-led ones like product recommendations and live search, to some of the interesting things around analytics and others, kind of getting back to that point where total cost of ownership, when you have to keep up with upgrades, et cetera, is a cost. It's a cost that's for merchants. And so the more that we can keep things integrated in the areas that we know our end customers need, I think ultimately that gives us a solution that really helps us meet that in a very, very optimized way, whether it's the front end itself to the optimizations that are done at the GraphQL layer, then of course even the platform and infrastructure itself. It is a full solution that is more than just PWA. And so our goal is about that, but also again activating certain key features, functionality that I think it can be uniquely optimized, not possible, but optimized without the need for customization. So it's really that of out of the box. But we often use that Apple example quite a bit for what we have out there, knowing that there are other ones as well.
What are the key elements the merchant should consider when making a choice? Is it gonna be Venia, Scandiweb PWA, Vue, some other solution, custom build? What are the main criteria, deciders? Eric.
One of the biggest ones, cost, right? And so if you think about what the communities and what we're creating here, this idea around having a marketplace, becoming more turnkey, That's a big part of it. The other cost is training and enablement, right? We've talked about that a little bit. If you're a merchant and you are not familiar with React, if you don't have your own team that's React based, what have you, then that's going to be a much bigger cost and a much bigger consideration for you to ramp and learn some of that. And then said differently, even for Vue and others, right? And so I think it's the cost of onboarding, so the upfront cost from decision to launch, and then the ongoing piece as well. And so I think cost is the biggest piece of it. The results I think are important, but I think ultimately, if you look at what we're trying to do here, it's about the overall total cost of ownership, and then yes, to do so in a way that is more turnkey for that one. So as a merchant, that's what I would be thinking about most. But ultimately, there's the cost of not doing it as well. And I like how kind of Ray and Marianne were talking about this earlier. While in many ways this feels early, even for some merchants at this moment, much different conversation than a couple of years ago. Today, there's the cost of not getting the conversion that Jonathan has seen in his experiences, that we've seen with customers like Elmas that have seen 85% mobile conversion improvements. Like we know that's there. And it's a matter of finding the right partner and developers that can help pull that together. But that enablement is going to be very different from one customer to another. So I would look at it as cost, and then to some degree time. And then one of the ways that you can and that we encourage customers to get started is to not to think about this as a single implementation. You can start small. Maybe it's a smaller market, a smaller store, a language, or what have you, or even just a reduced set of features, functionality, and then build beyond it. Because what's nice about this is that this is all still pointing to the same platform behind the scenes. And so as you look at that flexibility, it allows you to get started and essentially launch your stores faster, which is not unique to P2P Studio, but we're doing this in a way that is heavily optimized and works across our infrastructure, our APIs, et cetera. So cost and time is, again, which at a high level, but kind of breaking it down to really what that means, and that's heavily reliant on standardization, enablement, et cetera.
Jonathan, if you were to have to start a brand new project today, which direction would you go?
It's a good question. I did it a couple of months ago, but every day I ask the same question in my head, like, why do we do so much customization, Because it's a very high cost, as Eric mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And after that, I keep thinking about the user experience. Sometimes you want to create the same user experience that you have inside your physical shops. So if you want to do so, it's going to be hard to make something without customizations. That's why it's really complex, and I think it depends on the merchants. There are some merchants that can do the customizations because they have the money to do so, and the other ones have a smaller budget and need to stay out of the box. I think the two models are great, and that's why there are several solutions like Adobe Commerce and Shopify and so on that can offer a different way of building an e-commerce today. And we learn from all of them. So that's the interesting part. So today, starting a new e-commerce, we have chosen Vue Storefront 2 because I had a success story with Vue Storefront 1. That's why I've decided to go this way. My team was not able to develop a Vue framework at all, but they learned with some developers that we hire as freelancers. Really great developers that know pretty well the Vue.js community and how to make the things work really in the good way with the best practices. So they are learning, and they are building already for a couple of months a lot of components, composables, etc. They are really familiar a couple of months after with this new language and also with Node.js. They are really happy to jump in new technologies because they were, of course, working for some years with Adobe Commerce, and of course they wanted to see other things. So that's why we decided to go this way. And of course, we take a look of the costs. For sure, it's normal every day. I battle quite a lot about this because they were not used to have such freelancers in the company. So it's a new way of working because we have the developers in-house. So I've mixed freelancers and developers in-house. They work together, not in the same place. We are all over France in different places, and we meet one time a month for 2 or 3 days to see each other and talk about the project. We work in an agile method also. To do like Eric said, it's important to cut sometimes some features because you want to go live on a smaller market. So it's exactly what we are doing. We will launch a very small market in July for 2 very small countries in terms of business for us. And then we will see all the platform goes, and then if it goes well, we will go with biggest markets right after.
Yeah, I can completely relate. We have probably sort of a different scale at Scandiweb. We have about 550 people at the moment working for Scandiweb, but yeah, and a lot of the team is remote. I mean, we have a couple of offices here in Riga, but since the pandemic, not many people actually do turn up for work, but they're still working from home. And yeah, applying structure can actually deliver quite good results. I believe we were in a good spot when the news hit, because we're a digital company, and so are you in a way. And I think that helps a lot for it. Eric, I think a lot of people are waiting for for you to expand a little bit on the merge of Adobe and Magento. So I did raise that question before. I don't know, perhaps you're a better person to expand a bit more. I'm having my fingers crossed you have something to share, perhaps. But there's been a lot of talks. There's been a lot of rumors. I'm hoping for you to clear the clouds.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So yeah, the merger itself, I think at this point, is now 4 years in the making. So in many ways, we've really, I think found our stride in the journey and kind of how we're starting to work with Adobe. And with that has come a lot of changes. You're probably not seeing there's some names and faces that that may be elsewhere, but ultimately the soul and kind of the spirit of Magento still resides inside of Adobe Commerce. A lot of things I'd mentioned earlier in terms of finally like looking at the integrations, finally looking at the things that make the combination of this kind of play to our strengths are finally coming to life. But I think ultimately this question is really around the future of Magento as we know it, and ultimately open source is still part of that. And we've been really encouraged, and we're meeting very regularly with the open source task force through the Magento Association about talking about what this might look like in greater terms, right? And so as Josh and team set out at this point about 9 months ago, open source remains a pillar, and that's something that is of interest in finding ways that we can really find a way to thrive, both across Magento as you know, but really as we're starting to find these integration points within Adobe. So unfortunately, there's not like specific news like we're going to be like we're here to announce X, Y, and Z necessarily, but we'll see working really hard around the strategy, potentially some opportunities to really see more of this in a way amidst the changes that we may not have seen in a bit. We're starting to return more to events like this, and you're starting to talk a little bit more about this, but you'll see that more in our actions versus our words. But also, we're continuing to talk to our leadership to find ways to really amplify in a way that I think serve both ways. And so, unfortunately, no big announce or press release necessarily, but you'll continue to see more. And as I mentioned before, a lot of this will come through by way of really elevating the Magento Association in a way that you probably haven't seen before, and that's a very exciting way and a very exciting time for us. And it's not unlike how Acquia and Drupal work together, where the community is really in that seat, and we've been collaborating and getting a lot of great input from folks that we all know, like Vinay and Willem and many others, to provide input to this. So that's kind of the current state of things. But ultimately, there's work to be done in front of us, whether it's releases, the partnerships that continue to expand and really find ways for both to work. And I kind of sit on both sides of this, both with my role in the association, but also Adobe that continue to support both needs. And if anything, we're asking more for growth to this in a way that I think we'll all be excited about, but nothing to share yet today.
So are we going to see Magento community and Adobe Commerce deviating away from one another, or we can still expect them to go hand in hand and be quite similar in their core?
Well, right now it's hand in hand, right? Open source is the bulk of the code, the bulk of the DNA of the commerce product, and the commerce product, of course, gets deeper into infrastructure, of course, for pay functionality, formally EE and of commerce, and so that's still very much the case. We don't want to forget where we came from in this part of this, but you'll see this, and you've seen this in some of the net new functionality that again, product recommendations and live search are good examples. Those are SaaS-like features that are just added on to the platform. So this concept that Ray talked about, the leaning of things, really allows us to get to a more flexible and a more extensible product overall for this one. So for us, there's very much that relationship. That's where we've come from, and we're looking at areas where we can seek more innovation and more participation through some of the efforts that we've seen and heard in the community. So the trick is really to find a way to match all that together. But ultimately, we're going to do it in a way that I think meets all the needs, and that's been what we've been working through, and really listening from the Magento Association.
It is really great to hear, because I think you're absolutely right, because the Magento core really is, in a way, the community, and it's about adding the corporate services that do look more attractive for the corporate companies. But yet at the same time, I can only assume, but I assume the majority of Magento users are actually on community, and a lot of those community members really want, if not the same, but the similar class of the service as extensions. They want a similar class of services. They still want to build modular commerce. They still want to build PWAs. I think we all know we've done a lot of work within Scandiweb to build Scandi PWA, which is also extendable. There's a lot of compatibility, which really serves the purpose when we look at a broader market. So, there's always the right tool for the right market. And at least for me, as from the agency perspective, I can see clear paths for both of these services. They're both really beneficial for the right type of business. And I think from going forward from here, there is a path for both types of customers, the community and the commerce too.
Agreed. I think part of it also is the feedback that we've seen, and even some of the small steps that we're taking, in some cases non-functional, that have addressed some of the recent questions in the community. And so, as I look at our list, and for some of the things that we have talked through with the task force, some of these things are already in play. This idea around bundled extensions in 244, no longer are those coupled. Some of the questions around developer licenses and sandboxes, where there's as far as access, which is such a key to our product itself, a lot of those have been resolved, and really this transparency around an open source roadmap. Leadership prior to me kind of talked about that at the Magento Association Connect and other events like Adobe Developers Live. We're doing our best to be more transparent about that in parallel, or in a way that is consistent with Adobe Commerce as well. So we are making some steps in that one, but I think part of you'll see functionally, but also non-functionally as well, with the needs of both of these, as they are dependent on each other, but also maybe have some slightly different needs as well. So those are acknowledged, and we're making some small steps there that I think are worth noting, even beyond the core itself.
And it's and from my perspective, it's also really good to see that Magento Cloud is really maturing and becoming a better product. I do remember the early days; there were some challenges to overcome. I was lucky enough to run the first PWA project that was deployed to Magento Cloud, and there were quite some challenges around that at the time. But it does seem like the infrastructure part of the product is also becoming real mature, and it's also becoming really tightly connected with the rest of the products, and it does seem like the integration between Adobe products is only going to get stronger and stronger over the years.
Agreed. You said it best, and yeah, we're really encouraged by some of the work that your team has been doing as well. And so appreciate appreciate what you've done, certainly in the past for the community, and I think your optimism, your shared optimism, really for the future.
Jonathan, I think one thing that we have come over, all of us, is the post-COVID pandemic. At least at the moment, seems to be back down to earth, and no more big challenges. From a merchant perspective, as the customer interest post-COVID, are there any trends that everybody should be looking out for?
It's a great question. I talked a bit before about live shopping. It's one of the last features that we pushed live post-COVID to keep the engagement on our digital area, because we have still big expectations for sure. We did great things during COVID. We saw the website working really well, with real improvement in terms of sales. So expectations are high. That's why we started this new project to create a better user experience, and we can't wait to see it live and to see the fruits of the work for several months of our developers and also our product owner. Yeah, it's the big thing actually for us. We are waiting for this time to happen to work on the next improvements asked by our marketing team. They want to improve the search, also have a product recommendation, more things more live and not manual as we do today. I know Adobe Commerce has some tools regarding this, so we will take a look to them in order to maybe implement them in a headless way with GraphQL.
But I guess the core of the question, do you see the challenges around customer traction and engagement in the numbers, or is it simply based on some assumptions and you're trying to do it preventively?
We actually see a lot of back in store. We have KPIs for this. We can see it really. Online, it's complicated because everyone has come back to the stores. So we are trying to push them on the website, but stores are open. And, we are a bit different than other players in the market because we work a lot with drugstores. So drugstores are our main activity ever at the company since day one. So we can't battle with them. We need to respect them and also have the same promotions at the same time to not create any troubles with them, So that's why we need to take care of this. And we are trying to, of course, reach new customers, and with what we've been doing forever, and we have great numbers here too. So it's interesting, and can't wait for the end of the year to see if we were able to do everything we wanted to.
I think the topic of joining the e-commerce with physical shopping experience is a really good one. We will have Oscar Ross from Bismax talking tomorrow afternoon on the same channel exactly about this topic, around challenges merging physical retail with online experience. You can expect that talk tomorrow at 4:45 p.m. Before that, tomorrow afternoon, we will be starting with Hiva and PWA. We will be joined by the Hiva Magento theme founder, William Wigman, and we will have our very own Scandi PWA head of product, Alfred Gelkins. later on in the day, we will also have a talk about journey to a stable Magento store, where one of our co-CEOs, Glenn Verskis, together with Roland Popops from Scandiweb, will be discussing how to get that done in reality. We have another day on Thursday, May 12th, where we have 3 more sessions. We'll have a head of our analytics, Renis Groskops, talking about factors to consider before international expansion. So any merchants who are thinking about expanding internationally, it's going to be really valuable to talk about that. We will be also we'll be talking about microservices here today. So we will also have a representative from Clevo Search and Product Recommendations, Rasmus Holsti. He will be talking about driving revenue growth with product discovery. That is on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Riga time. And we will have another interesting panel discussion revolving around e-commerce in Baltics. And how to turn payments into competitive advantage. We will have Urmas Karandorn from checkout.com, Henry Krusel from the local Grand Sportland, who's running e-commerce in all 3 Baltic countries, and our own CEO, Anton Sapriko. So please tune in for the rest of the days, tomorrow and day after tomorrow as well. Today, I want to say a big, massive thank you to Eric and Jonathan for joining me in this conversation. I appreciate both of your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure to talking to you both. I really hope the next time we can do the event in real life as well. We do have a real life event on this Friday in Riga for everybody who's here. Merchants go free. Agencies can also register for the on-site event. So I will be seeing you around tomorrow. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any additional words you wanna put out there before we close for the day?
I mean, I just want to say thank you as well. So thank you so much for having Jonathan and I. We appreciate everything that you and Scandiweb have done here for the community. So appreciate you, continuing to drive really some of the more important conversations that are happening in the community. And so couldn't be more thankful again for what we do and how we've done it. And so we appreciate you for bringing us in. And of course, the door is open. If you have questions, the community, this works when there's transparency. And so we want to make sure that we're serving the needs and making sure that Magento Association is a big part of that as well. So thank you so much again for having us. But as in closing, I think, thank you for everything you've done here. And thanks to Scandiweb.
Yeah, Eric, you said it all. Thank you so much. It was really great to be here once again, and hope to make it in real life in front of you next time, Renis. Have a great afternoon and a great event. I will be taking a look tomorrow.